tea rooms in Kawaka in the 80s, maybe they're wanting to know about my parents' tea rooms.
Order.
Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Todd.
Well, Mr. Speaker, can I ask you on behalf of the opposition to put the Lord's name back into the prayer, because thank God that minister stopped speaking then at the end of the 5 minutes. Well, we'll try again. So here's the thing. There is only one thing that this country can be thankful for to Winston Peters, is choosing Jacinda Ardern as the Prime Minister. Without that, Kelvin Davis could well have been Deputy Prime Minister of New Zealand. And wouldn't that be a concerning, sad day? When the opposition are asking him about a dairy in there, actually it's because every time he's released his diary, all it talked about is the lunches that he has. I've got to say, Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the opposition, that is a disgraceful speech from the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, because there wasn't a single thing of importance to New Zealanders that he spoke about. Mr. Speaker, up and down the country, this government is being seen as ineffective and in a shambles. Mr. Speaker, Winston Peters is about to go off to the US, but what he won't tell New Zealanders about is what the government's position is on a UN agreement when it comes to migration. Does he and his government accept that the United Nations have had an impact and a say when it comes to New Zealand's immigration practices or not? And what I want to go through is just a little bit of process here, because what we've heard from the Honourable Mr. Peters, Mr. Speaker, is not giving absolutely the detail that New Zealanders need about his involvement and the involvement of this government. He's right that in 2016 there was a process in the United Nations where the United Nations tabled an agreement or a document that went through with all members supporting, and that was about refugees. New Zealand was not involved in the negotiation, and when it was open for signature, some 50 countries did sign it. New Zealand was not one of those countries. It dealt with a refugee problem around the world, with great numbers of refugees moving towards Europe and other places. Largely, the things that were in there, New Zealand could support, because with our refugee policy, it was more or less in line. But where we had issues was where the United Nations wanted to start telling countries of the world of what they should do around migration and immigration. That document said there should be more discussion and debate, and that a compact could be negotiated that could set out some of these rules. Now we jump forward to Mr. Peters, who is the chief negotiator, the negotiator-in-chief when it comes to the United Nations compact that has just been agreed this week. On the 20th of February of this year, the first round of negotiations took place. On the 7th of March of this year, Winston Peters received a briefing on the negotiation, and he was asked to sign off on New Zealand's negotiating parameters. He did that. Let me be clear. He is the negotiating minister. On the 13th of July of this year, under a New Zealand First Labour government, that agreement was concluded. New Zealand was involved with the negotiation of it and its conclusion. Mr. Speaker, then on the 10th of December, we jump forward. On the 4th of December, Winston Peters said last week he's concerned about sovereignty and the effect this UN agreement could have on New Zealand. He said non-binding agreements have the challenge of becoming binding over time. He denied receiving any briefings or that Cabinet had made his decision. On the 10th of December, Monday of this week, the Prime Minister tells the media that no decision has been made to support or sign this UN compact, and she's seeking legal advice. On the 10th of December, the UN Secretary-General puts out a statement saying that the Migration Compact has been adopted by countries that includes New Zealand on that list, and it is going forward. On the 11th of December, Winston Peters denies that it's been adopted, and on the 11th of December, Winston Peters tells the media that the decision around New Zealand signing up and adoption of it has been pushed out. Here is the issue, Mr. Speaker. The issue here is this government has not been clear with New Zealanders. I think they've decided to sign up to this, but they've seen that Australia and many other countries have concerns with it and have said they won't sign it, and they're not being upfront with New Zealand. Why is that? Because Mr. Peters knows that he made pledges to the New Zealand public when in opposition in the last campaign around immigration and migration. Mr. Speaker, The public knows that Winston Peters has made pledges over many years that he doesn't believe the UN should have a say on New Zealand policy. Here is an agreement that will actually force New Zealand to do things it may choose not to. Winston Peters is on his way to America at this moment. Mark my words, Mr. Speaker, New Zealand will sign this agreement next week. It is not in the best interest of New Zealand.
Well said. The Honourable Willie Jackson.
Mr. Speaker, today I stand